We are live. Thanks everybody for joining us live. If you're seeing this, we're already starting to get people trickle in. You got to see us because there's a lag with Dennis going over what we're going to cover today. So if you got here right when we started to the 30-second lag, you got to see that. But now that we're here and we've got people coming in, Dennis, so I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, so welcome everyone to the March edition of Legal AI Live, which we're doing on the second Friday afternoon of every month with the sort of recurring guest panels that will change from time to time depending on availability, and we'll kind of we're working up a general format that we will have to kind of give consistency to the episodes, and you'll see some we'll start to do some repeating features as we do that. But I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm the director of the Center for Law, Technology, and Innovation at Michigan State University College of Law. And I have been involved in the world of legal technology and innovation for a very long time. Last month, just celebrated the 22nd birthday of my blog, which is somewhat ironically named DennisKennedy.blog, which was sort of a joke that blogs would ever one day become important enough that they would need their own top-level domain name. And the joke was on me because to get that domain name when it finally happened, I had to pay like $500 or $600. So, but anyway, so let's go and just have other people introduce themselves as well. So, on my screen, I see Gio next. If you want to tell people who you are.
Greetings from Chicago. My name is George Bellis. Friends call me Gio for a lot of reasons, but I won't give you the history. I've been involved with technology since I bought my first computer in 1982. It wasn't even more of a word processor, and it cost me $12,000. But I had a bonus. I had a big dot matrix printer that when it printed, the whole building shook. And then I went to a mobile phone, and then I was just telling Matt about my fax machine. And now God knows what we're doing. We're all fumbling around with AI, just like we did. And like Matthew just suggested, the only good thing about it is right now the playing field is level. We're all stupid about it. So looking forward to more of this.
That's fair. Carolyn.
I'm Carolyn Elephant. I'm a practicing attorney in the energy and environmental justice space out of the DC area. I'm founder of the myshingle.com blog. It's the longest running blog on solar and salt farm practice. And more recently, I have been training and speaking to lawyers on AI through bar associations and platforms like this. And my mission is to make sure that every lawyer knows how to use it to be more efficient, to expand access to justice, and to just have fun. It's just it's fun to have this new development just crop up and change things, especially later in a career. So for those of you who are at the beginning of the career, you've got a whole life in AI ahead of you. So hope that you're all embracing it.
Great. Yeah, I think that we should talk about fun sometimes because I find myself using that word a lot when I talk about AI with lawyers, and they give me a funny look. But I think it's really important. Matthew, how about you?
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here again. I'm Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney. I have the mid 21st century version of a blog. It's a podcast, but it's also a newsletter, which is kind of like a blog, and it lives online perpetually. What are things anymore? Words don't have any meaning, but it's lawsubscribed.com. And because I use Substack, you got to put in the www dot, or you might not get there. But in any event, I love my practice. I don't bill by the hour, so efficiency matters. And so I've been using AI back before generative AI was useful. And so from day one, I've been leveraging the tool, and I love learning new things and experimenting with it. So let's dive in, Dennis.
So I always like to start out like I do in my AI and law class at Michigan State with this question that I have, which is just, what did I try in AI? And because I'm always curious to what people are actually doing and what they tried that was new. So I've done a whole bunch of small experiments, and I may talk about this later in the podcast, but one of my friends made fun of me because I can actually say now that during spring break, because most lawyers don't get spring break, of course, but during spring break, I spent a lot of time on a personal knowledge management project trying to leverage the Google Notebook LM AI, and it went way, way, way better than I thought. And so I'm really intrigued by that. And what I like about Notebook LM is I could pull in my materials, my documents, my articles, other things like that, and then that becomes the AI that I use. And it can, I can find connections, I can find things really quickly. It does a great job of mimicking my writing style because it's trained, because it has my stuff in there. And I write a regular monthly column, and I was able to say, hey, take a look at the last columns and suggest 3 new topics that might logically follow from where I'm going. And so it's just a really interesting use that leverages what I think is the coolest part of Notebook LM, which is how easy it is to pull your own material into it and have the AI work on that. Gio.
We actually dumped an entire case into a chat GPT as we were preparing for a jury trial. And we asked it to do a couple of interesting things. We asked it to help us with voir dire, and then we asked it for an opening statement, and it gave us an opening statement. But then we asked it to do it in a particular style, following the recommendations of some writers who have adopted what they call the reptilian instinct for presenting a case. And it did. And it gave a theme for the case that we hadn't considered. So my challenge right now, Dennis, is before I do anything, I try to use some AI tool and to do it first to see what happens. The other thing I found myself doing was as I'm talking to clients on the phone or in a Zoom, and something comes up, I just on the sidebar, I just asking chat for whatever it is. And like this morning, I asked it, what is going to be the capital gain rate for 25? And so I could figure out what their tax aspects are going to do on a stock sale. And I didn't have to look it up or figure out what it is. It was right there in front of me. It's interesting. It's going to be an interesting tool to see how we use it and develop it.
Yeah, that's great. Carolyn, how about you?
So I've been curious to see how well ChatGPT deep research function handles a lot of data. And unfortunately, my cases are very bespoke. It would be difficult to glean trends from them. So I thought, let me get some wills and upload them. So I realized that I couldn't just go to the registry of wills and just say, give me all the wills. You have to download them and pay for them one at a time. So I had a law clerk do that. She downloaded 50 wills. It cost $180 for my data. And then I tried to upload it to ChatGPT, which told me it couldn't read. Well, it partially read the stuff. It read the cover sheet, but it didn't read anything else, which I was able to tell. I was waiting for that. So then I had to OCR the PDF files, which Adobe didn't cooperate with. So I had to go through like 3 online platforms to get it converted to text. When I finally got all of that done, I uploaded it and I asked Deep Research to prepare a paper analyzing trends based on the information it found in the wills. And it put together, it was interesting, ChatGPT Deep Research 4.5 version of GPT and 01 version gave different papers. The 01 paper was about 10 pages. The 4.5 was like 30 pages. I posted these on LinkedIn. It was amazing. It gave all these trends. It said like one of the wills that was filed was like 40 years old. Some of them were like 4 days right before the person died. Most of the wills didn't have any provisions for digital assets. It was able to hypothesize which wills had been DIY versus the ones that were attorney read. And then I asked it based on all those wills to generate, based on those wills and independent research, to generate a template for a will that could be a starting point for practitioners with instructions. And it did that also. So it's just amazing. I would love to do that with like trademarks and divorces, but just me as an individual, just getting access to that data is impossible. It's cloistered, especially these wills. I mean, people, I know estate planning attorneys always tell people, one reason why you don't want to have a will is because it's public. It's not public. It's you go through like 3 different gates in order to get it. I don't really care about that public. It's what they used to call practical obscurity. So, but yeah, that was really interesting. So I love doing those little experiments like that. I'll have to come up with one for next week.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued with what I haven't done much with the deep research because my direction is going in a different way, but I'm really intrigued with this stuff that you're finding, what I see other people doing that, and we'll talk about this later, but it does, bring me back to this thing. I've noticed that that AI right now, the things we can do, that some people are doing is so different than the AI that people are talking about, that so much has changed in the last few months. And I think the deep research tools are just one example of that. Matthew, how about you?
Following up from last month, which is a reason that everybody should tune in every month because we're going to give updates too on things that we're working on. I have been continuing to experiment with Notebook LM Plus. Find it way better than just the base model that comes with a Google Workspace account or if you have a Gmail account. And in part, that's because I could have up to 500 sources in a notebook. But also, what I was going to experiment with is I was starting to build out client files in Notebook LM Plus so that my client, and then share it because you're allowed to share and give access to clients. And I was trying to experiment with this with one of my best clients who was with me when I launched my law practice. Well, let's say that he in his business operations is now able to leverage Notebook LM Plus and he's loving it. However, I found out that right now you could only share within your own organization. You cannot share outside your organization. And the actual, what they say is it just says sharing outside your organization is not supported when you try to share outside your domain. And so I can't experiment with anybody because it's just me. And while I might have 50 email aliases with all the domains that I have, I was not able to experiment with this. But my client is actually going to give me a domain inside his company. And so we'll be able to sort of experiment with what that looks like through his stuff. And what I also found is you can't just upload Word documents. You have to convert them to Google Docs or have PDFs, but I'd rather them be the searchable docs. So for like legacy files that I have a lot of Word docs, it's actually a massive undertaking right now to actually put all my files, if I want all of the stuff from those files that have Word docs in there. And like I still have clients who prefer I use Word. So for those clients, I can't actually leverage Notebook LM Plus like I want to as like a research assistant for my practice on those files. So that's unfortunate. I mean, I could do it, but it's so much administrative work right now that I'm putting a pause on that for client files. I'm still going to use it for my practice in other ways, but for client files, in particular those where they're in the Microsoft ecosystem, I have to wait till Google releases that. But I did find out that at least in Q3 or Q4 of 2025, Google Notebook LM Plus should be able to share outside of your organization, but that's a roadmap, so anything could happen.
Right. It's interesting. I'm going to read this note I made to myself in Apple Notes today, and it says, using Adobe Acrobat as a major channel of input into Notebook LM feels like a real breakthrough for me. And so I spent the last couple of days thinking about how is it going to be easy for me to get information of all different types into Notebook LM. And it's probably as accurate the way you say it, Matthew, to call it Notebook LM Plus. And it looks like leveraging the Adobe Acrobat tools is going to be the simplest way to at least get started. So I think we're at this stage where you're going, I know what can happen in Notebook LM. It's just getting this stuff in there is becoming the trick. And I was actually using, AIs to suggest ways that I could do that. And the AI didn't come up with the suggestion, but it was me. It's like, well, what if I just use Adobe Acrobat and just create the PDFs from a web page and start pulling information in that way? Would that work? And the AI, as it always does in its effusive voice, says that's a fantastic idea. So I felt good about that. So one of the developments I think since the last time we talked is around what I would call research and surveys, and the whole notion of benchmarking AI, which it seems like suddenly people decided is this new idea that's something we should look at. And so benchmarking and use, and you see some of this, a lot of this has been released this week or in the last 2 weeks, I would say. And it's really interesting talking about let's compare how these tools work. Let's have human lawyers do some tasks and then compare to see how AIs do. Let's have law students do some tasks and compare how AIs do. Let's survey like how different parts of businesses, how much they use AI and that sort of thing. And so we're starting to see some information. I think it's helpful directionally because the surveys tend to be small, and if you kind of drill down to what they're asking people, I'm not sure like what we actually learn in some cases. But I drew a couple of conclusions from it, and one is it sort of is a confirmation bias thing, but it sure does seem like in the surveys of usage that we're seeing that my feeling that lawyers using AI are way behind the rest of the world is really bearing out. So I thought maybe we talk about use in general and then maybe drill down to the AI versus human lawyer surveys that we've seen. So I can either go around the horn, or if somebody wants to jump in and say something that they have a thought about, or I'll kick it over to. Oh, go ahead.
So first of all, I've seen some of the reports that have come out of law school. I think there was one by Daniel Schwartz or David Schwartz at University of Minnesota. And I was intrigued by one of the findings. It found that for legal analysis, the tools, just the general O1 reasoning tool, was superior to a legal research tool in terms of like drafting legal analysis, which actually doesn't surprise me that much because the GPT tools are built for writing and analysis, whereas the research tools are research first. That's really their primary point. But the second thing is I have to say I'm a little, with all deference to the Schwartz report, I'm not criticizing that report. It was very well done. But as a general matter, I'm very skeptical as a practicing lawyer of evaluations by academics. And I say that for two reasons. First of all, I remember in law school when I took legal writing, you were rewarded for the memo that had the 75 issues instead of rewarded for the memo that had 3 issues that hit the nail on the head. As a practicing attorney, I don't want to get a memo full of garbage. I want to get something that focuses on the reasoning issue. So because of that grading scale in law school, I don't know if a similar scale is being applied to the review of the AI products. And the second thing is just, again, as a personal issue, I've gotten writing samples from students who claim that they got A's in legal writing. I thought the samples were garbage. So I won't say what law schools they came from. They came from pretty good law schools too. So either I'm getting very crotchety in my old age, or maybe some law professors aren't as well trained as they should be. But I would like to see, I think those reviews are important. And I'd like to see more of lawyers sharing the results that they get themselves, sharing the prompts and sharing the reasoning steps that they took to get there. I think that helps us learn a lot more about their effectiveness, or barring that, just seeing a study based on practicing attorneys or attorneys within a law firm as opposed to law students doing it. But I do want to emphasize that piece of scholarship from the Schwartz report. It was excellent. It was very analytical. It was very comprehensive. So I'm making clear, I think it had some useful results.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree because because there is a systematic approach, and it's, you can see what was happening. You can say like, oh, I wish they would have done this, but it does give us a great starting point on this. And I think that. Again, a lot of the stuff is directional, right? So it's saying like, I had this feeling that, I was going to make law students worse, or it was going to make them better. Now we have something to look at, and we can, as in other surveys, we can say, oh, I wish they would have done this, but somebody else can do that. We have some ways to follow up. I know, Gio, Matthew, your thoughts on?
Go ahead, man.
So so with benchmarking anyway, like what I want to say about that is I've been benchmarking Perplexity. I've been benchmarking Perplexity's Pro Search versus its deep research against Gemini's deep research. And I have found that I don't like deep research based on the Perplexity Pro answers. And in particular, and sorry for just kind of answering my own question here, but I felt like I needed to talk about this stuff just for folks to know. Like whenever I use a new AI tool, I always ask it questions I already know the answer to, whether that's about a document or about a research project. And I don't know, like I didn't have any particular training there, just maybe like my philosophical like underpinnings, like getting a degree in philosophy made me think that that would be the best thing, like my training there perhaps. So when you let these tools engage in deep research, they're looking at more things in the internet, right? And the internet just has so much unreliable crap. I mean, like, I don't know another way to put it. And so I am just finding, I don't know if you'd call them hallucinations. I mean, it's just inaccurate. Like it reaches inaccurate conclusions based on the sources cited. Like it's still giving me citations, whether it's in Gemini deep research or in, I don't know, I don't have access to ChatGPT's deep research because I already have these other tools, or Perplexity's deep research. Like you look at the citations and it just doesn't conclude. It doesn't make the right conclusions based on the premises. And I don't know if that's something about the way these deep research and deep thinking models work, but there's just something that's nice. And I literally, and like I feel terrible about like the energy consumption for this kind of thing, but like I am experimenting, right? Like I'll pull up 2 tabs in Perplexity and I'll run the same exact search, same query in deep research and in pro. And the pro answer is just always far more useful because going back to what you said, Carolyn, like, you know, do you need like a giant essay on something or all the issues, or you just want the most important 3? Like I'm getting the best information that's useful and easy to consume in just the pro search and Perplexity rather than the deep research. And it's accurate in my experience. And so my own personal benchmarking, that's what I found is like right now, Perplexity Pro, there's no more reliable non-legal research AI tool in the market that I've been able to get my hands on.
Cool. How about you, Gio?
To be honest, I haven't worked with Perplexity. I've been aiming to do that. I'm just running out of time because I'm too busy practicing law. But I use Lexis extensively for all kinds of things. Their program has gotten really good at answering questions that are legal issues. But going back to some of these tools, like I think it was Google when they were setting up their AI model, they bought all of the data from Reddit and threw it into, they paid, you know, $100 million or whatever it was for all of the posts that were on Reddit to add to their LLM. So part of the research, you get all of the wacky answers that you found that you get in Reddit. You know, when people just throwing out some stupid answer just for the hell of it. And it's the old story, garbage in, garbage out. So where are we drawing the information for the LLM that we're relying on? And for me, I like the authoritative sources that we've always relied on because I'm older than everybody else, and it's just a standard research tool that what I use. But I'm using ChatGPT more and more with their higher end model for asking and asking complex questions and drafting documents. And like you suggested, Dennis, even blogs. I wanted to write a letter. Well, I won't tell you to who, but I wanted an outline of what it was, and I get it. I can't right now. I'm having a hard time getting past just using ChatGPT for what my needs are.
Yeah, and so there's an interesting phenomenon for me is this development of benchmarking, which you see sort of across the AI industry, and just a little bit in the legal world. But I think the interesting thing is comparing the different AIs to human lawyers, whether it's law students, whether it's other things. Some of those results have been really surprising to me and unexpected. And again, I always like to look, see where the sampling was done and stuff. But I showed a number of these to my students recently, and there's one that says, like, among lawyers, and I think these are in-house lawyers, but ChatGPT 64%, and it worked its way down. And so like the co-counsels and Harvey's, the legal specific, were well toward the bottom. And the Lexis AI was probably the highest rated of those AI tools. And that's the one that my students tend to be the least impressed with, just sort of anecdotally. So that was interesting. And then people saying that they felt, especially in time savings, these really significant time savings that they were seeing compared to human lawyers. And then also quality, you were seeing things like, 28% felt that the AI's results were at least as good as a mid-level associate, and 28%, different 28%, but the same number, said there was as good as a senior associate. And so you start to see that kind of data out there. And you know what I usually find is it's kind of like one prompt, check the answer, that kind of thing. So not a realistic in some ways. And because my thought is always like, well, what's the prompt and how are we doing that? But I think as we start to make decisions about what law firms are going to do, what lawyers are going to do, how legal education, what we're going to do, those studies become significant. At least they say, at least directionally and anecdotally. And then also on the time savings one, I would say as a client, I would already be asking my lawyers to pass through time savings. So those are some of my thoughts about surveys. So again, I'm curious. I'm always curious to see what you guys think about those things as well.
Well, I talked to a couple of federal judges recently, and they have Westlaw, and so do their law clerks, and they are using it. They are throwing it into their, I forgot what the program is, where they analyze a brief and will tell you if they hit it or they missed it.
Yeah, that's clear. That sounds like Clear Brief.
Okay. And I know Lexis has the same thing. Now, and then one federal judge who's fairly well tech oriented says he uses both because he doesn't rely on either one. And he also asks that is use both of them as well. Now, what all this is going to come out of, I don't know. But I remember the only thing that keeps sticking in my mind, I remember listening to a professor from Canada last year, and he said, what's the big deal about AI? We've had it for years. They're called associates. And keep in mind how we use them. We give an associate a project and we give them an outline, and they come back and you could hear the wheels grinding from the library. And a couple of days later, you get a draft and they give it to you to review, and you raise questions, you edit it, you ask them to check a few things out, and you give it back to them. And then another day later, you get another draft. But all along, there's a process of interacting with the law clerk, interacting with, like we do with the AI. The other thing he says, what's the big deal about AI? We've had it with associates. We pay them $10,000 a month, but now we're paying $500 a month for using AI. And that's really what we're going to end up seeing more and more of. And I'm amazed at how many law schools are not teaching this. And I just did a moot court competition, and I asked them, can you use AI in preparing your arguments, the moot court? Because all I have to do is take all the information, throw it in, and ask AI to give them an opening statement or whatever. And they said they're forbidden from doing it. They are not allowed to do that. Well, that's like the boat with one arm. Why don't you use it?
I have found, because I will speak at high schools, colleges, and law schools, on AI and efficiency and all that stuff. And I find that for every 50 students, one of them has done some self-education and is directed and interested. And I just end up having a conversation with one or two students, and then the whole rest of the class is listening. So the students that are interested are out there and they're learning about it and they're finding out, right? But it's then how do we get more people interested? And frankly, I think that's what this is supposed to do. This lives on LinkedIn forever, right? I'm connecting it to LinkedIn. I see, we are getting thousands of views on these things. So that's pretty good. It's helping get the word out. To go to some of these other tools and such that we were talking about, I'm still using Paxton. I still think Paxton intuitively, but also with the Stanford benchmarking, intuitively though, I always thought it was just more accurate and better and getting better results. Now it is more expensive. They have a proprietary language model that's legal specific in addition to the others, but And I'm starting to see some of these tools copy each other in useful ways. So like GCAI, I don't use that anymore, but I did use it back when they were in their like free beta stage. Now I think you have to pay for it. And it might even be comparable to Paxton in terms of cost. So I saw them do this first, but Paxton's doing this now, which is you give parameters before you start prompting it to draft something, right? And it's going to remember those parameters in that chat log so that you don't have to you don't have to like keep providing it with information. So it's like extra memory. And I always put in there something along the lines of, I'm curious, Gio, if you're doing this and you're drafting with ChatGPT, like, less wordy, because AI likes to be really wordy, and avoid legal jargon unless it provides particular clarity, right? And I find that it's doing an incredible job. And I do know that GCAI did something like that too. And what I still haven't seen in any other tool yet that I did see in GCAI, so shout outs to them, is you could have like you type / and then you have like preset prompts for all kinds of different things. So it was like a prompt library like built into the tool. And GCAI also asked follow-up questions, which I'm just not seeing like before it gives an answer. And I thought that more tools would copy that feature, and I just haven't seen it yet. So I wonder if it's a hard thing to do, but it also shows the power of GPT wrappers because they are just a really good GPT wrapper, right? And like asking those clarification questions it was like a magical moment when I first experienced that.
I ask it to write in my tone, and I ask it to, you could ask it, are you sure everything you said is accurate? And of course, they sits back and says yes. But
so do associates, right? So
yeah, but we're learning. I think that the point that we're making here is you want to benchmark something. What are we benchmarking? We're benchmarking air. I mean, it's all of this is ethereal. We're having a hard time just grasping this concept of what AI is. And we're just fumbling around with how to use it. I mean, the real people that are using it, are the ones that are using it for coding already. I mean, we lawyers are just fumbling and scratching at the surface of what to do. And where we're going to go with it, I have no idea. I was just telling the AI committee from the State Bar Association, there are times I actually fear for our existence, not just lawyers, but humanity. And because every time you think you know something about this and something else comes up that it does, and it's just freaking amazing. And I'm sorry, I'm just absolutely in awe of this technology.
Carolyn, let's get some thoughts from you.
So I think Nicola Shaver of the Legal Tech Hub had a post today about how she was talking to a big firm partner who said that his corporate clients, they said they wouldn't pay for first-year associates' time. And that's been something that's been going on for a couple of years now. Now they're saying they won't pay for second-year associates' time either because they feel like what they're paying for is AI. So that's kind of a serious wake-up call to law firms. I mean, do I believe it? No, because law firms are still sucking up these $1,200, $1,500 rates. But if what they're saying is true, and you still need a class of associates who you need to train to eventually take over the law firm, they really do need to know how to use AI and how to drive it and how to manage it. And that's how I see, at least for the next few years, the compatibility between training and AI. I've been saying for a while that I have my assistant use AI to put together marketing content, newsletter content that previously I would draft myself because it would have taken her as long to do it. But with AI set up to, the parameters that I like, I feel okay with her doing something like that. And I think the same is true with associates. You use them to drive the AI. So you're not just like making searches into the ether, but you're giving them something to do. But at the same time, a task that would have taken them 20 hours might take them 2 hours. So I think that's what has to be done in the short run, because you can write off the 2 hours. It's going to be a lot more to write off the 20 hours.
Carolyn, don't you find, like, for your blogs, the amount of time that's going to ask you, you're going to give it to somebody to do or do it. You can ask the AI the same, dictate what you want to ask and what you want to write, and you could get it back quicker than you can by sending it out and asking somebody else to do it.
Well, so for something like a blog, I'm still very particular about that. ChatGPT doesn't quite get my voice yet. So those are things that I still do myself. But with the things that I give to my assistant, it's something that I get off my desk immediately. So it's not just having her do the post, it's having her take that post, put it in the newsletter, and get that newsletter out the
Sure.
door. So it doesn't have to come back to me. But you're right, if it were just a task that I were doing myself, if it were a client email that I needed to send, I might have ChatGPT write the response and then just send the email myself. I wouldn't send it back and forth. But these are things that she's already responsible for the admin part of getting them out and sending stuff out. And so it takes me out of the process. I just put it off my desk. Now, eventually AI may be able to do that. The big talk is about AI agents. And, in theory, you should be able to tell AI, write this post, then put it into my newsletter and send that newsletter out. Whether anybody is going to trust it does, that kind of stuff fortunately doesn't work now. So you don't have to worry about trusting it, but I'd have to see how accurate that is before I would trust it to do something like that. Send out an email without me reviewing it.
I think you could still have AI agents do a lot of work for you, Carolyn, and then part of its job is to present it with you and you still get to click send, right? But it could go out and do all the research and do everything, and it could still save boatloads of time. I think we're going to be there in the next few months, actually.
Yeah. It's interesting because this morning there's a great LinkedIn post from Peter Duffy, who's in the Netherlands, I think, either the Netherlands or London. And he's talking about how he kind of put together, with the help of ChatGPT, this voice to AI tool that he can like dictate thoughts as he has them, and they kind of go through a workflow, and it's really cool. And in the discussion, he talked about AI as a friction reducer and how voice was an example of that. And I said, it's kind of interesting to me because I sort of see that the first generation of us using AI, I see it as like a text tool, but this new generation is going to see it as a voice tool, and that will be very different. And so I was doing this thing this morning, and this is a little bit agentic without agents. I said, I'm working on this project. I want to schedule out like what I'm going to do for the next 3 months. And here's the amount of time I want to spend on it. And here's the things I want to do. Put together a roadmap and a project plan and some SMART goals and some, deliverables, those sorts of things. And I had to do it. And I went through some back and forth. I go like, no, I'm not going to, you've missed the point of what I'm going to do. I'm not going to spend time on that. Plus, I'm really experienced in these other things, so it's going to take less time. Like a few rounds back and forth. Now I know exactly what I'm doing next week to move this project forward, and it fits what I'm doing. Even though I started out with something that was sort of in the ballpark. And I think that is that notion of saying like, oh, I asked it to do this, it brought this back to me, I looked at it, it said, nah, not quite. And then it did it. And there could be some things that eventually I would have the AI do for me, like in terms of simple research and stuff like that, automations, especially, that it could do. There's one thing I do want to cover, because we've touched on this today, is that I feel like even in the last month, there's so many new tools and there's so many things to consider. It's almost like when we're talking about AI now, everybody's talking about something a little different. Like from Matthew, I always learn something new and I say, I should be using the same things that he is. And now I'm really super committed to Notebook LM. And I realize it's going to foreclose some of the things that I do. I'm not especially using legal AIs, although there's a new legal AI I heard about yesterday called Deep Judge, which the description of it is it's a law-focused AI developed by ex-Google engineers. So that's like the selling point to me. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know that I really want to have like an AI that's developed by a law firm or lawyers, but like ex-Google engineers, I'm interested in that, right? So, and I'm looking at these things and I say, well, this project I'm doing is Notebook LM. And I'm really, because I want to do some graphing and some charts and some other analysis, I'm thinking about doing a simple parallel of it in the Wolfram, which is a mathematical AI tool, and doing that. But then I'm like, I have this list of potential AI tools I use, and it's already as long as my arm. And I need to kind of keep that simple And then we're finding these things like, well, this is best for this is best for this, those kinds of things. So I think it's going to be like a harder discussion. So Carolyn, you remember this, like when you were first writing about social media for lawyers, like you could actually do like a presentation about social media for lawyers. And then, but in a very short period of time, you had to say like, no, we can only talk about LinkedIn. We can only talk about Facebook. We can only talk about Twitter. And I think in AI, we're starting to get to that point where, you know, there are all these different things happening, and it becomes really difficult to say, like, what is my AI toolbox? So, you know, Matthew, you've probably done the most on this of like developing like a really explicit toolbox of AI. But what's your thinking these days as you see more and more tools?
Well, first of all, I have to recommend another AI tool, Dennis, because I feel that's appropriate in light of what you just said. And that is one that I've had a tab like saved in like a tabs folder that I need to go back and check. It's called Napkin AI, just napkin spelled regularly. I don't know if you heard of Napkin.
I think I know the genre that it's in. But...
Yeah. So it will create visuals, you know, for you, right? So if you want charts, if you want graphs, if you want all those things, images based on words or decks or whatever, like that's what it makes. And I have had some people say they have great results with that. I don't know. I've been meaning to test it out. So I would definitely check out Napkin AI. I think they used to have a freemium version. I don't know if they do anymore. And that might have been why I didn't actually test it out. I want to mention this at some point, Dennis. So I appreciate the question, because if folks go to techshow.com, I'm talking on this, I'm kind of talking about this topic and specific to my tech stack. So that presentation, I think it's just called like Tech Stack Deep Dive for the Modern Virtual Law Firm. And because I've submitted my slides, I know I have 107 hardware tools. I have 82 software tools. So, you know, like that's a lot. And it's kind of crazy. And I kind of had it organized, but not really. And when I was asked, you know, when I submitted this idea for this presentation, I was like, shoot, I actually have to like make this now. I have to actually go and count all my hardware and software and everything that I'm using. And I really got granular. And even I still forgot Google Slides. And I got that in at the last second, right? So it was originally 81, now it's 82. Like, because you just use these things and it's hard to like parse them, you know, when you're just using them every day. And like realistically, you know, I'm really only using like 10 to 12 daily, you know, of these software tools, right? And unconsciously. But there are so many and it's so hard. And I have another CLE on just the AI tools that categorizes over 80 AI tools that are legal specific. And when you count in the general tools, the non-legal specific, I should say, it's like almost 100, right? And so it's just mind-boggling. And all I could do in that CLE is put it into categories for folks. Because there's not like, you don't have enough time in a 1 hour long CLE to go through deep dive on every single AI tool. And there was a point like a year ago where I was actually demoing every single tool. And then I hit like 50 or 60 and I was like, okay, I cannot, these are not even relevant to my practice anymore. And like, I really like Even Up and like what other competitors, now there's a couple competitors in that space, what they're doing in the PI market, but I'm not a personal injury attorney. So just like reading what's on their website or having Perplexity Pro summarize something for me is enough for me to be able to explain it, I think, at this point. But it's really hard, like to keep track of everything. And at the end of the day, like you said, Dennis, I agree. Just like with Google, with Facebook, with everything else, with Kleenex, with Xerox, like some brands will rise to the top that are more useful, and whether they're the best or not, or they're just better at marketing, or they have, you know, like those are going to be the 5 things everybody uses.
Yeah. So Legal Tech Hub published this thing with 400 legal AI tools. And there's this chart and it has all the logos and it's really hard to read. And I've used it in my class to say to students, okay, you're at a law firm. They're asking you, what AI do you recommend going forward for the firm? Because you're the young person, the new person who presumably knows about AI. And this is overwhelming. But I said, it's interesting they use logos here because it is going to come to this brand notion to say like, well, I might trust a brand. And so I'm going to go that route. The other thing is that when you talk about categories, I'm like a real fan of Clayton Christensen's jobs to be done theory. And so I always look at these tools and say, what job are they going to do for me? Or the other way says, what job am I hiring this tool for? And so I divide things that way. And I also think AI can be helpful if you say, like, here's the things I need to do. Here are some tools. You're an expert in AI tool selection. put the tools I should consider in rank order. And then you would say, oh, I can, my limit is like, I will consider 3 or I'll consider 2, or I might consider 10, but at least that gives me a filter to work with that. Carolyn or Gio, your thoughts on trying to manage the tools?
I always go back and forth between looking at new tools and trying to learn more about old ones. So this week I've been doing more of a deep dive into Claude, looking at the console feature and how it can prepare prompts and diving into artifacts and things like that. So I'm just always, but then there's the shiny new object that I want to try. I've got to look at napkin.ai. So I go back and forth, but I think you're right that at some point there's going to be convergence. I don't know how they're going to converge, but I think you and Matt are both right that there's going to be some kind of convergence naturally.
Got to give it up. Right. It's impossible. First of all, my practice is going crazy. And so what do? Practice law or play around with new toys. So I go back to my old reliables all the time. And it works for me right now. Now, how am I going to find new tools? Yeah, well, you're right, Carolyn. Napkin AI is going to get my look. All right. The other one on my list right now to take a look at is something called Deposedly. That is you take it'll help you prepare for depositions. There's just going. I said before, we're scratching at a surface that we really don't even know what it's going to be, how it's going to be used effectively. It's challenging.
I'm going to leave folks with one more tool that I apologize for in advance. But this is really cool, and I actually think, and I just looked up, and I think I discovered this actually the week after our last Legal AI Live. So if I did mention this last time, I apologize. But it's called v0.dev as in developer. Versal is the company behind it. And what's amazing about this tool is this is what I've been looking for, and at least it jives with me. Right? Like if you think about flavors of ice cream, because I've tried to do this with Replit, I've tried to do this with Claude, but what v0.dev does is you use natural language, and it is your AI assistant agent coding partner to build an app and render it immediately so that you could see it. And I've been building some really simple apps, and it is unbelievable how you just go back and forth. Oh, that button doesn't work. We need to fix that button. Boom, it fixed the button, and the rest of the app still works. Oh, we need to do this. We need to add this to the database, add that. I'm learning some stuff about coding that I never thought I would know just to better interface with the tool. I have to imagine if you're a developer using this, your ability to produce and make apps is significantly increased. But now, what does that mean for legal tech, and what does that mean for software? If I could just make an app that I could use in my firm for something, why do I need to pay for software? And the reason Versal gives it away for free, although there are some paid features which I'm about to subscribe to, is you only get 20, 30 prompts a day or something. And it goes by in 30 minutes. So I'm probably going to spend $20 a month on this company. Is Versal the technology that powers the back end? They charge a usage rates or something. So that's how they're making their money. But in their IP agreement, or in their terms of service agreement, you own all the IP, and they say even if the default rules would say we own your IP, we will assign that to you. So they're being very proactive on the intellectual property side to make sure folks can comfortably use v0.dev. And that is really cool to see. And it's, again, I'm not technical. I have a philosophy and law background. This is so cool, v0.dev. So I apologize to all of your afternoons today.
So I have another variation on the AI approach that people should look into, and that's the AI that's being put into the tools you already use. So I use Feedly for RSS feeds. Well, they're adding AI features. Readwise for clipping, Notion. There's AI going into these things, and even if it's the basic just summarize AI or generate tags or those sorts of things, that can be really useful. So you could say, well, instead of trying to figure out a couple of different AI tools, maybe I just figure out how to use AI within a place that I already live, which is why I think that probably over time in law, if you were making a bet, you would say that Microsoft Copilot will become the AI that's most commonly used because it's just right there. But it's super hard to predict at that point. So what do you think, Matthew? Should we give some tips and exit out, or do you have like some questions sitting there, or what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I have to run, boys, girls.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you. See you next month.
Bye, Gio. I'll say retroactively that my v0.dev is my tip to check that out. And if even if like a simple process in your firm, that's something that you might be doing, or if you're not a practitioner, if you're an educator or something, just like if you could build an app around it. And I'm actually starting with personal stuff, like with my own financial tracking stuff for my own like finances and whatever. Because right now I'm just using Google Sheets, a shared Google Sheet with my wife and I, like where we track all of our financial stuff. But it would be great if that was like a more beautiful app version of that. And then from there, build on integration. So that's sort of where I'm building in a comfortable space first. And then I plan to start doing things for my firm.
Cool. How about you, Carolyn?
I don't really have a specific tip, just for people to just use it, learn something new with AI this week. I think that's how you keep pace, is just do something new with it each week.
Yeah, so I have a prompting tip that I'm using really consistently now. Is like when I kind of work through a problem and do a whole chat in AI. At the end, I just type in a prompt that says, "What might I have missed, and what might be a blind spot that I have?" And I see what it generates, and usually gives me like 10 things. Most of it, sometimes it does surface the thing that I actually was trying to avoid. So it was a blind spot for a reason. But sometimes you pick up things, you go like, oh yeah, I did miss that. And I was talking to one of my students yesterday who said that, she has used AI in connection with some of the things that she's doing and especially preparing for classes, to say, what did I miss something important kind of thing. And then you say like, oh, because that's what I'm most afraid of, right? If I'm doing something, I'm talking about something as if I'm an expert and I miss something really obvious, and the AI could surface that. So what might I have missed as a final prompt is I think a really, really great tip for people. Okay, Matt, you want to take us out?
All right. Well, to the dozen or so who have joined us today, although since we're getting here to the hour, we only have 6 people left. Though I think we broke 12 concurrent today, which is pretty solid. Thanks everybody for joining us. Make sure you follow Dennis, Carolyn, and myself on LinkedIn and Gio, and click on the bell and click all, and then you'll definitely be notified when we're going live next time. So if you wanted to make sure that you actually see our posts about this and other things that we're covering in AI and what we're doing, and I know Carolyn, you've got some courses and stuff coming up on the topic. So if you guys want to see that, LinkedIn's a great way to keep in touch with us. We are on LinkedIn Live. So I'm praying to the algorithm gods on LinkedIn that by saying LinkedIn Live a lot, that maybe it will even help promote this show even more. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Have a great day.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.